In this episode of Miniature Landscape Hobbies, we're going to look at how to base models, including the isopropyl alcohol method. If you like learning about building a miniature, please remember to subscribe. The isopropyl alcohol basing method, or rubbing alcohol basing method, is a really versatile way to do your bases on your models. It promotes a very strong bond with your grit and enables you to get into the corners by using the capillary action of the alcohol so that you don't have to worry about overpainting onto the model itself after you've based it. So let's get to work and take a look at how to do this method. Like any other basing method, I start with putting some craft glue down and mix it with some water. This will let me stick the grit to the base. Then once I've got the water in the glue, I grab an old brush, stir it up so that it flows nicely. You still want it to be a little bit tacky. And I'm using clear craft glue here, but you could use white glue or PVA glue if you want. Then just taking your brush, go in and brush a thin layer of the glue onto the base. You kind of want to thread the needle between the legs of the models and in and around them. Depending on the type of miniature you build, it'll be easier with some than with others. Once you've got a coating on, now it's time to apply the grit itself. So in this case, I have about 20% kitty litter and about 80% sandbox sand. And you can mix up your grit however you like it to be, coarse or as fine as you want. I find this is a good grain size and mixture for my Team Yankee or Flames of War models. So there you have it. Now it's placed on the base. You can take a soft brush, dry brush, and go in and remove any dust or glue that has moved up onto the legs of your models, just to clear it away. Now, while the glue is still wet, it's time to move on to working with the rubbing alcohol. And there are some fumes involved, so you may want to make sure the area is kind of well ventilated. And here's the primary advantage of this method. So see here on this model, there's this gap here in around where the model's legs are. If you go in there with a paintbrush, you may just get the paint on the model itself. It's pretty hard to be pinpoint accurate while getting your paint down on your grit. The rubbing alcohol method eliminates that need because the rubbing alcohol will use capillary action to carry black ink or black acrylic paint into those hard to reach gaps. This will pre-shade the space and eliminate the need for really getting in there deeply with your brush. So first things first, we start with some rubbing alcohol and a pipette and some black acrylic ink. Of course, black acrylic paint, any kind will do. I just use the economy brand for this. Now I pour out some of the rubbing alcohol into a cup, and you don't need much. A little goes a long way with this. And then I grab some black ink, and I mix it in. Again, you don't need a lot of the black ink, just enough to turn the rubbing alcohol dark. You want to be able to tint it. There it is. Here's the white glue we were using earlier. I'm going to put some more water in it so it runs really freely. And I'm going to put just a bit of black acrylic paint in it. You want, again, enough to make the glue mixture more or less opaque, but you don't want it so much that it makes it difficult for it to flow because you're going to apply it with the pipette. I grab my first model and I start with the rubbing alcohol and pick it up with the pipette and start dropping it around the base. I want to get a good coating under the sand mixing in with the previous glue layer. As you can see, it breaks the surface tension and spreads out very quickly underneath the sand. Then while that's still wet, I move to the glue and paint mixture and go ahead and apply it down over top. And because of the rubbing alcohol and the watery nature of the glue, it really won't climb up on the model a whole lot, so you can get pretty heavy-handed with the amount you put on the base. The more you soak the base, the better the bond, although it will take that much more time to dry. I should mention that all of the tools and materials we use in this video are listed in the video description in case you want to take a look at them. Now the models have dried overnight, and as you can see, everything is set nicely. The combination of the black acrylic ink and black paint has tinted the surface of the grit nicely and has moved into sort of the nooks and crannies, so if we can't get our paint brushes in there, it's not as big a deal. So it's time to move on and start dry brushing the bases to get them ready for flocking. As always when dry brushing, we move from darkest to lightest, so we grab some dark brown paint, put it in the palette, get an old brush, pick up the paint on the brush, rub it off on some paper towel until there's just a trace of pigment left. And then we go in and start dry brushing the model. You just flick it back and forth lightly across the surface, and you can pretty safely vary the amount of paint on the brush with this method and just get it all layered in there around the models. Because we've pre-shaded with the ink and the glue drawn in there by the capillary action from the rubbing alcohol, you don't have to worry as much about getting the brush into the nooks and crannies and possibly painting over some of your previous work on the model itself. With the brown paint on the base, I move on to a tan color, and I do exactly the same process as before, pouring it out on my palette. I grab a brush, wipe off the excess, and begin dry brushing the grit on the base. And now I follow up with the final layer of dry brushing. In this case, I'm using antique white, which is sort of a nice off-white. And I go in and lightly dry brush this over the surface of the base. You want to be fairly conservative with the white because it could be quite overpowering or make it look like the models are standing on snow. You just need to add the contrast in with the white color. And now to finish off the painting, I go back to the original dark brown and I just go ahead and give 2 coats of it around the rim of the base. Next, I go back to my watered down white glue and I paint it on in random patches on the base over the dry brushed colors. And then I go ahead and sprinkle on any amount of static grass that I want and put on some extra accents by sticking down some pieces of lichen. And that finishes the landscaping of the base. Now we're at the final step. I load my airbrush with some matte varnish, and then I go ahead and give each base 2 coats of varnish. I do this to help the models last through the wear and tear as they're used to play Team Yankee. And it also helps hold the static grass and the lichens down so they don't get worn off. And with that, this project is done. Here's the final result. I think you'll agree that the rubbing alcohol method produces a very nice base. Everything is bonded down really well, and you don't have to worry about the grit chipping or coming off. Now the piece is ready for the games table or to be used in a display or diorama. Miniature Landscape Hobbies has an Etsy store. You can get to it through the link in the video description. At the store, you can find lots of the different types of terrain that we feature in our videos. We would appreciate it if you'd check it out. Any purchases you may make will generate proceeds to support the channel. That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. Please stay tuned for new content twice weekly on Sundays and Thursdays. We're your source for regular model building, miniature painting, and diorama content. If you have not subscribed, make sure you do, and press the bell button to receive immediate notification so you don't miss out. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep building life in miniature.